All right, we're going to get the show on the road. Can somebody shut that door over there? Jane, can you shut that door right there? Or somebody. I'm going to pass this signage sheet around. If you don't mind giving us your name and phone number. Email, we'll keep in contact with you through this whole thing. Send you information along the way. Here you go. You don't have to give me your email. If you're giving us your phone number and stuff, you don't have to give it again. So, all right. Well, I'm Rich. Rich Jones. I'm the CEO here at FAVOR Greenville. You are at Family Recovery Group. Just so you know, we're at the right place. If you thought you were at the PTA meeting or anything like that, it's not. I have an agenda tonight. I have some things I want to talk about, but we can kind of go in whatever direction we need to. So ask questions. And just stop me at any point if we need to talk a little bit more about anything that you're dealing with, anything specifically that you're dealing with your loved one, and any clarifying questions you might need to talk about. So, give you a real quick background on who I am. So this is kind of who I am professionally. I've been working in this drug and alcohol mental health world for about 20 years. It's maybe about 5 of those years were spent in mental health. The rest have been in drug and alcohol. A lot of different settings: private practice, inpatient drug and alcohol treatment centers, outpatient drug and alcohol treatment centers, and then for the last 5 years I've been here. This will be the 6th year that I've been at FAVOR Greenville. FAVOR Greenville, a little bit different. We do recovery coaching rather than counseling and therapy, and our goal is to kind of connect with folks. A lot of education, a lot of knowledge sharing and information sharing, with the goal of helping people understand what they're dealing with and understand what their options are, and really just kind of keeping people in the process of recovery. We believe that for family members and for individuals dealing with this issue, that it's not a one-time event. It's not this situation where boom, I got this. I went off to rehab, I've been dipped in the waters of recovery, and I'm good to go. Or I had this moment. That's not how it works. It's very, very common for there to be slips and falls, stumbles along the way. And how can we help families kind of figure that out? That's our goal. And that's the goal of this group. So really, I provide you with a bunch of information. I hope it's useful. I'm going to teach you stuff tonight and go over stuff tonight that I go over with coaches and I go over with counselors and things like that. And really, like the theory or the idea goes, knowledge is power. The problem that we have is we can't really, there's so much of this issue with addiction, and then if you throw in mental health and all those other issues, it's so intense and there's such a need that we can't rely on just folks like Rich. We got to teach you what you need to know so you can deal with this on an ongoing basis. Not so you can treat your loved one, but you know what it's called and you know where the options are and where the places are that you can look. That's not how you've been conditioned. You've been conditioned to go to a professional and get an answer, right? Like that's how we think the medical system works. That's how we think treatment works. And a lot of times, as providers, we will fall into that. Let me tell you exactly how to do that. Let me tell you exactly how to do this. It doesn't take into account that when people leave our office or they leave our facility, that they don't necessarily do exactly what we told them to do. I was sharing this story the other day. I went and got my blood pressure. I had to get my blood pressure for a life insurance policy for this thing, this key man thing. If I die, the company gets all this money, which is pretty morbid if you think about it. So I go and I have high blood pressure. My blood pressure is a little bit high. And the moment that they tell me that and they say, we want you to come back on such and such a date, literally in my head, I'm like, I'm not going back there. I'm not going to follow the treatment plan. Now, if you all want to judge me for that, I would highly encourage you to think about your life and all the times you knew what the right thing was to do and you did the wrong thing anyway. And if you never had that happen, that's probably even more concerning. This idea that we all kind of like roll the right way, and all we got to do is tell the person what they need to do, and all we got to do is tell the person what's good for them, and they're going to follow it. You guys understand that's fantasy stuff. That's fantasy. It's a series of what slips and falls and steps and missteps and decision making. I'm going to get back on the wagon and I'm going to try again. I'm going to get back on the wagon and I'm going to try again. And that's where the hope is. So it's not just people who have addiction that don't do the right thing. I think it's like 50% of Americans do not take their antibiotics the way that they're supposed to. Diabetics, about 62% don't follow their insulin plan. You guys get where I'm going with this? It's all of us. So, all right. Like, there's no way in the world I should be drinking coffee tonight. My wife's going to get all on me because I'm drinking coffee. And it's what? 20 till 7. You know what? The stuff I put in my body, I could drink this coffee and lay right down and go to bed. For me, it's like actually like an anxiolytic. All right. Let's see here.
Rich, I have one question.
Yes.
If you have a kid that's on marijuana pretty strong, and they say they'll go off of it if their parents will buy them Kratom to go off of it.
That's a specific question.
Yeah.
Like, that's a very specific question. So the kid is saying, I will go off marijuana if you buy me Kratom. Okay, so it's a good question. The answer is no. I would never play ball with anything like that. Kratom is it's an over-the-counter herb that has an opioid type effect, and it's not scheduled yet. The word is it will be scheduled, meaning the federal government will say that this is not legal anymore. But right now it isn't. And no, that's not the type of thing that we would recommend. And it's not about judgment upon Kratom or anything like that. It's just, as a parent, you don't want to blur those lines. It's the same thing. Like, it's also problematic when you say things like, "I'm going to let you drink at the house so that you're okay." I get the concept of that, but you have to clarify with your kids that somehow you have to clarify that, like, that doesn't mean I think everything's okay, and that's the problem whenever you do something like that. Kids hear what they want to hear. I'm using the term kids loosely. Let's just say, for sake of argument, 16 to 25-year-olds. They literally like hear and interpret things the way that they want to hear and interpret it. Some of us do it until we're 50. But, and then you mix in substance use, and it gets even more difficult. Now, that doesn't mean that they have to like freak out if he goes. I mean, it's a different conversation about whether or not you do that. You see where I'm coming from? But the idea of like actually doing it for them, that's what I would avoid. That's what I would avoid. In addition to kind of like my professional experience, I'm a person in long-term recovery. For me, it was alcohol use disorder, and it was opioids that really, really drove me to my knees. I've been in recovery for 19 years. You know, classic situation. I was in a car accident. It was in Western PA, and I walked out of the emergency room with 120 Darvocet, and I mean, tolerance built up very, very quickly, and it took me like in all those places that those drugs take you to. But I was able to get recovery, and I thank God for that. That's when I went back to school and kind of got involved. All right, I'm going to give you a bunch of information tonight, but first I want to talk about, again, we're going to talk about this every week on like what are the options, what do we have available for you here at FAVOR Greenville, how can we help? And remember, like we got your back, and we're going to support you no matter where you are in the process. But if you're a family member dealing with an issue, and I go over with some stuff and you identify where you're at with it and what's going on, you're still left with some very basic choices. You can literally do nothing new than what you're doing right now, which is coming to groups, talking to people, gathering information, right? There are people who start this process, and you just need to take a deep breath and try to figure out what's happening. Would you guys agree with that? Because where I get concerned is, you know, if you call the wrong place or you talk to the wrong person, they're going to be like, get him in rehab, let's do it right now, come on, let's get him on the plane, let's get him in. We don't want to be like that. We're trying to calm it down, and you can learn more about this. I suspect, though, if you're here and you've been coming multiple times, you may already feel like you know a good deal about this. So you might not be in column 1. But anybody have any questions about column 1? It's literally like I'm figuring this out. And most families go through a stage where they're figuring this out. What is it? What's it called? How dangerous is it? What are my options? All that stuff. And we will support you and answer questions related to that. Any questions about column 1? All right, column 2 is you don't have to confront it. You don't have to hold a meeting or an intervention. You can stay connected. You can start to try to nudge the person. You can start to have conversations, but you don't have to sit down and have a formal, I don't like the word intervention, but you don't have to sit down and have a formal intervention. There's this idea of trying to stay connected. There are different models that do this. Probably the biggest model is called CRAFT. If you were to Google that and look that up, they talk about this a lot, that you stay connected and you continue to express love, but you try not to enable, you try not to do self-defeating things, but you're also not doing an intervention. The determining factors on column 1 and column 2, really honestly, is kind of like, how long have you been dealing with this? This is not the type of thing, column 1 and column 2 is not the type of thing, you know, you probably want to do if you've been dealing with this for 30 years. That's usually like a little earlier on, because you're just not sure exactly where you stand on it. Do you guys get where I'm coming from? You're just not sure whether you want to go there just yet. And typically what happens is, as time goes by, you gather more information, maybe you find out some stuff, and you're like, okay, we got to do something. He needs to be in some type of recovery. He needs to be in some type of treatment. It's kind of hitting the fan. And that's column 3. And the lowest level in column 3 is you can literally just plan a meeting with the person. And the staff here at FAVOR will help you out with that. You can call our hotline and you can schedule an appointment, and they will come in, and you will come in and you'll tell them what's going on, and they'll ask you the questions about who else can get involved, are you sure you want to do this, and they'll literally like help you figure out how to do that conversation. Now that conversation is not an intervention, and the reason it's not an intervention is it doesn't come with bottom lines. Bottom lines are, Rich, if you don't do what I'm telling you to do, here's what's going to happen. This is literally just a family meeting where you say, like, we're worried about you, we love you, and we really want you to get help. We want you to go to this program. We want to let's get you over to FAVOR, and you can start checking out their meetings. It's a open communication, transparent communication with your loved one. What's it confronting? It's confronting the theory of like the elephant in the room. Everybody knows what's going on here. We just haven't had a real conversation about it. It also is confronting the idea that in most situations there's usually a point person who's dealing with it more than others. So if you look at like families that are dealing with addiction, there's usually like one person who's taking most of the brunt, kind of answering all the questions, dealing with all the issues. You want to get others involved. You want to the more you get involved, the better, up to a certain limit. But the more you get involved, the better. So you kind of spread the responsibility. And you also spread the love and you spread the concern, and it makes it harder for the person to write it off. Any questions about column 3? The thing about column 3 that gets people squirrely, and one of the reasons why they don't want to do it, is they just simply don't want to, like, well, there's two different reasons primarily. One is they can't figure out who else to get involved. They can't figure out, like, who can we get in this conversation. And then the other one is they're just real uncomfortable, bringing it up. Why are people so uncomfortable bringing it up? Anybody got any ideas there?
It's hard.
It's hard? Why is it hard?
Well, for us, it was, I think we were still in denial.
So there's a little bit of, like, do we actually need to do this?
Yeah, is she on drugs or is it just the bipolar mania?
Yeah. You guys hear that part? Yes, go ahead.
Stigma.
The stigma, it's just something we don't talk about. That's the way that our country has rolled for decades, to the point where they have a term for it. They call it the elephant in the room. Uncle Joe is really not, it's not that he's drunk, it's just his medicine kicked in. That's why he's passed out in the mashed potatoes. Right? It's that type of stuff. We don't say the word alcoholic. We don't say the word addict. We don't say alcohol use disorder. We just put our head down and do everything that we have to do and cover up for it and make it okay. Why else is it really hard to talk about? Why else is it, what other reasons is it difficult to have these family meetings?
They're confrontational.
Very. They're typically not going to respond by saying, well, thank you, Mother.
You're going to say mother.
Thank you for bringing together the family to talk about my issues. It's not going to go down like that. It's usually going to go down like what?
Screaming.
A lot of screaming and yelling, a lot of like, you're crazy. So let's talk for a minute about, if you decide to do it, some of the strategies around that process. The first thing we would recommend is you literally come in and talk to one of our intervention specialists, one of our family specialists, who will talk you through some pointers about that process. And really kind of dig down into what's the best time of the day to do it, who should be there, what tone of voice to use. We think we can do things to minimize some of that aggression. For example, one of the most obvious things is you don't want to do it like right after an incident. Why? Why do you not want to do it right after an incident? Most people will want to do it right after the kid comes home hammered. They won't want to do it that night, but they'll want to do it the next day. Why is that the worst time? Yes?
Because the subject's still under the influence, so to speak.
Well, and it just happened, and he spent the last 48 hours getting himself revved up knowing you're going to say something. So he's all jacked up, just waiting for you to come in and talk to him about this problem. You guys get that? You almost want to wait like a period of time when there's nothing going on and say, can we sit down and talk about this? And that's when they're actually more likely to hear you say things like, hey, we're not talking about putting you in rehab. We're not talking about you're a drug addict or an alcoholic. We just want to talk about this issue. They're more likely to hear you in that scenario than they are right after it happened. How many people here have ever known that they were going to get in trouble? Right? From whoever. You just knew it was coming. What do you do if you know you're going to get in trouble? You spend all this time rehearsing it in your mind. You're literally like, he's going to say this, and I'm going to say this, and he's going to say that, and I'm going to say this. And by the time you get to the conversation, they're already in a nate. So, and then the obvious stuff, don't do it if they're under the influence at all. You can't talk to somebody who's under the influence. Try to make sure that the team is kind of all on the same page and calm. And then have a plan if it does go sideways on what you're going to do. Those are all things that the coach can help you work out. Any other questions about column 3, about the middle column? Column 4 is a good old-fashioned intervention without the confrontation and the ridiculousness of what you see on A&E Intervention. I don't know how many people have ever seen that show. That is not an intervention. That is exploitation of people who are addicted. It is a reality TV show, and I really don't understand how they get away with it. I do not understand. It speaks to the stigma of addiction that they can do that and put it on TV. And the people that are doing the interventions, I question their skill set. I question their professionalism. That is not appropriate. That is not what it's supposed to be. Just like what? Dramatic enough that it's good reality TV, but it always works out in the end. You get where I'm coming from? That's not how it goes down, guys. I mean, when they go to rehab, it's never like that. It's never like they stormed out. You know, I kept doing interventions and I was just waiting for somebody to storm out and then dramatic music to kick in. So I could chase them down the road and we could have just this perfect conversation. No, usually they either go, like literally like, okay, I'll go. Or they say things like, I'm not, I'll think about it. I don't think they don't even answer is the other option. Occasionally you'll get some drama. So we don't do interventions like you see on A&E, but we do ask you to write a letter, and we do ask you to talk about bottom lines, because we think that if you get to column 4, it has to involve, if you don't do this, you can no longer live here. Or if you don't do this, we are no longer paying the bills. Or whatever it might be. You get that part? That's really the only difference between 3 and 4. Right now on column 4, we're trying to figure out how to manage it. I've said this in here before. We have a lot of people that will check out column 4. We don't charge for that right now. We're trying to figure out how to resolve that, because you can't just check out column 4. You're either in or you're out. You're either in or you're out. You cannot halfway do an intervention. Does that make sense? There's no such thing. Because why? Like, it's game time. You've made a determination that this is so serious that I'm getting together like 5 or 6 people, and we're coming in and we're going to let them know what's up. And the bottom line part of it, guys, is the difference. You guys, I really want to emphasize that. Column 3, where it's a meeting, you don't have to say the ultimatums. But in column 4, you do have to say that. And that's really, you see how that sort of takes it to a next level, right? Because if you say it, what? You got to follow through on it. So if your conversation is, you're no longer living in the basement, if you don't get some help and get the treatment and get this taken care of, you have to make sure that you're willing then to go do what? The notice to quit and get them out of your house. If the deal is, I'm no longer like paying your rent, or you can no longer work for me, or whatever it is, then you have to be willing to do it. Do you guys have any questions about column 4? The biggest thing is make sure you're clear in your mind. And then column 5 is just good old-fashioned detachment. That is, I'm not going to confront them. I'm not going to do the meeting. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm so worn out by this situation. This has just gotten the best of me. I'm detaching from the situation. I love my loved one, but I'm not going to respond emotionally or financially or any kind of way. I'll still talk to him occasionally, but a lot of times people in column 5, they even stop taking phone calls. Most of the time it's because why? This has been going on for so long that you can see it on the person. You can almost see the person's like demeanor where they're just totally worn out. And that's column 5. And now there's all kinds of details on what you would want to do with your loved one and what they're up to. So it's not that simple, but it's really one of those choices in terms of like, what do we do? Any questions about that or anything I can clarify?
Just maybe that you kind of, or we did, and like go back and forth.
You can go back and forth. People bounce around. A lot of times people will be thinking that they want to do a family meeting, but then they'll find out they don't really have anyone to do the family meeting with them. So they have no choice but to stick in like column 1 or column 2, that kind of thing. Sometimes people will say like, I'm going to see what happens with this. Sometimes people will do other things. I shouldn't say this is all that can go on. These are just the things that are most structured. Sometimes people will just say like, hey, start going to meetings, and they just kind of like talk to the person one-off, and the person starts going. One of the techniques that I recommend for family members to do that's not up there is to, make sure that the person knows that you're coming to family recovery groups, and make sure that like they know that you're trying to figure out what you're going to do about this situation.
That really scares them.
No, it freaks them out and don't say specifically what that is. Because number one, you don't really know yet. You're figuring it out. And that'll just get the wheels spinning. Like, what do they talk about over there? What are they talking about? What do you mean you're going to get it worked out?
Yep.
So that's another way that has sometimes prompted people to kind of get the show on the road. Any other thoughts or questions about this part of the process? Talking about this issue, guys. And this is the theme for tonight. And this is the mission This is my personal mission. I'm not sure how this plays out or what this looks like when it's all said and done, but giving people information and educating families so that families just start talking about this. If you start talking about this, you're moving the ball down the field. And what do I mean by talking about it? I don't mean, I can't believe you did that again. We're not doing this anymore. That's not talking about it. I mean talking about it with heart and with feeling. I love you so much and I'm watching you self-destruct. I love you so much and I just can't stand this anymore. Can we get you to somebody? And even if they say no, you're making a difference because what? You're not just sitting on this thing anymore, waiting for somebody like me to fix it. Because I know that's what goes down. That's how the healthcare system works. Whenever I have to take my son to the doctor, what do I think? When I take my 5-year-old to the pulmonologist, what do I want to have happen? I want him fixed. Seriously, I want him fixed. Like whatever you need to put in him, throw him through, whatever. So I took Aiden to get blood work done. Aiden is the coolest kid in the world. I love, all my kids are super cool, but Aiden is like, he's been through all this stuff, all this poking and prodding. And so we go in to get this blood work done. And we're in there, and he sits down, and he knows exactly what's going on. And he goes like this to me, you can go.
And he's how old?
He's like 6. He just turned 6. He's like, you can go. And I'm like, okay. And I leave. And then he goes and he gets it done. And he comes out. So I'm like sitting out. He comes out. And he comes walking out. And he goes, I swear he says this. Because he has older. He says, that was kind of jacked up. That hurt. And I was like, what are you, like 40 or what, dude? Like, what's going on here, man? But what do I want to have happen is I want them to what? Do the blood work and come back and say, it is ABCD disease. And you treat ABCD disease with EFG medicine, and he will be fine in 6 weeks. And I know that's the same thing what it's like whenever you're dealing with addiction. I know it. I get it. And we are part of the solution, right? Like we are part of the solution. But at the same time, we want to be real transparent and straightforward with you. It's highly unlikely that there's any one person or one place or one event that's going to fix the person. It's going to probably be a series of people, a series of events. I've never saved anyone's life. People will say that to me all the time. You saved my kid's life, or you saved so-and-so, or you saved me. I've never done anything like that. I've also never been responsible for anybody's unsuccessful treatment. Do you get that? Like, I have been part of a process either way. And the families, like, that's why it's so important. You guys are always with them. This is Rich way out here. This is you right here. So, you know, now it changes, right? We got to be, like, real clear about this. This changes over time, depending on how long you've been dealing with this and how old the person is and what the living situation is, and the dynamic of the family changes. So for me, there was a period of time when it was my mom, right? But then it was my wife. Do you guys get that? So it's not like I'm saying that the family, it's always the same person. I just mean the people who are closest to the person. No, you know what's going on. You're really, in a lot of cases, you're the only one that knows what's going on. The workplace doesn't know. The school doesn't know. As you move out, the other people that we would target, and the other part of the strategy is to start educating other layers. So I've given like 5 or 6 talks at churches over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Every Saturday and Sunday I've been speaking at different facilities and different programs. And it's all about this type of stuff, because why? If maybe we can get the congregations to start paying attention. Maybe we can get the schools to start paying attention. Maybe everybody can become a mini expert and know enough and know how things work where what? We can all start working together as a community, and it doesn't have to be about what insurance you have, and it doesn't have to be about what rehab you go to. And then it also becomes more comfortable to bring this up with your neighbors. It becomes okay to talk about it at Sunday school. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. There's a hell of a lot of work involved with it. If it doesn't make sense, don't tell me. All right, so if you break it down statistically, it's crazy, guys. It's crazy what we're trying to do right now in America. And it's crazy like what you guys are, like, no wonder it's frustrating. So there are about 24 million people who need help with a substance use disorder. This is through this massive survey they give called the National Household Survey on Drug Use and Health. It's been done since 1971. It's the kind of like the gold standard when it comes to measuring mental health and substance use. So you got 24 million and change who need help, but only 2.4 million are getting help. There are only 2.4 million are actually doing anything. That even includes self-help groups. Okay? That means what? Almost 22 million are just sitting out there not doing anything. And there was a Pew Research study that said 46% of family members report dealing with a loved one. And that's another 150 million. So these numbers start to pile up in terms of people needing help. Are you getting this? And we only have 2.4 million involved, and all we hear every day, everywhere, is we don't have enough money for treatment. We don't have enough money for treatment. What are we going to do with these? What if another 90% of these folks showed up? What if even another 10% showed up? Are you guys following my logic? Do you understand how the system runs? Like literally, how the drug and alcohol treatment and the mental health treatment system operates literally cannot do this. It wouldn't, even if everybody became willing tomorrow. That's very, very scary. That is stunning. That is why it's up to us. That's why there's no longer, you have to be an expert to take care of this issue. We all have to become experts. We all have to become experts. Family, friends, churches, schools, police officers. FAVOR Greenville already trains third-year med students. Did everyone know that? I'm on the faculty at the med school. I never in a million years would have thought I would be on the faculty of a med school. You know how many times I've told my mom I'm on the faculty of a med school? Like seriously, I just bring it up like randomly. I'll call her on the way home tonight. She'll be like, hello. I'll be, hey mom, it's Rich. I'm on the faculty of a med school. I just want to let you know that. I'll talk to you later. You know, it's so it's super cool to train the doctors with this DOJ grant, or this Department of Justice award. We think we're going to be training police officers. So that would be pretty cool too. It's that idea of who can actually step in and who can help. All right, so that's the idea. Tonight, what we're going to talk about, I'm going to go through, I'm going to talk about addiction, but I'm also going to spend some time talking about co-occurring disorders and trauma. That'll be kind of like and stop me and ask questions along the way, right? Make sure you stop me and ask questions. There's so much involved with addiction, guys. There's so much involved with substance misuse and risky behavior. I mean, we paint with a really broad brush and we throw words around and we act like everyone's the same. Can we all just agree that this is exceedingly individualized, based on all kinds of different factors? How old they are when they started, the particular substances that are involved, whether or not they have depression or anxiety or trauma, all kinds of different things, family genetics. So this is, I'm going to give you information, but in no way am I saying it definitely applies to your situation. You have to stop and ask me questions and also think. One of the bad things that we've done is we've said that, like, there's a garden variety, addict. There's a garden variety person out there, and they should be treated this way. And here's the way. That doesn't make any sense, does it? I mean, we're all individual people with our own personalities, our own background. And it's as unique as our thumbprint. Our personality is literally as unique as our thumbprint. And so why would we think what worked for Rich is going to work for every single person? So can we become individualized, and can we try things and just not give up? Remember, we're also dealing with this confusion. This is addiction, okay? 15.9%. That also includes nicotine. And if you roll back from that, that's probably about 5%. So it's around 10% in any given year meet criteria for drug and alcohol, for addiction, for substance use disorder severe. But then you have all these folks. And these folks are getting it done, right? This is risky. And a lot of these folks, what's that? Did somebody say something? Oh, you're faking me out. So these folks frequently wind up in drug and alcohol treatment. They wind up in drug and alcohol treatment. Why? Because you can't tell the difference, and it's dangerous, and so we get them there. So one of the things we want to say right off the bat, depending on how old your loved one is, it is very, very natural and very sensible for them to say crazy things about what they're doing. Like, everyone does it. This isn't any big deal. You're overreacting. I don't think I'm addicted. You guys get that? Like, that's because there probably are a bunch of people where we're not sure. Just as a society, what do? We have to kind of react with the worst case scenario. Do you guys get that? Like, you can't say to a group of 10 people who may or may not be addicted that, 8 of you are addicted and 2 of you aren't. Why can't you say that? I mean, I guess you could, maybe we should, but they're probably going to be like, all 10 of them are going to be like, oh, lottery. Good deal, man. Rich just said I'm not addicted. So, and also, you in any disease, think about this. Any disease, what do? You overshoot rather than undershoot. That's why we have to go get all these tests. You ever notice you go to the doctor for one thing and you're going to get 17 other tests? Some people say that's all to generate revenue. I don't think it's all about revenue, guys. It's also about this thing called defensive medicine, where I got to make sure I cross my T's and dot my I's to make sure I rule everything out. But I'm going to talk tonight about this group, because this is the group that will drive you, that you just can't understand. This is the group that does all the things that blow your mind. Now, this group certainly can become that group, right? And you don't know exactly when that happens. Depending on what the person's doing, depending on how long they've been doing it.
Does genetics play a big
Yes.
role in that?
Genetics plays a huge role. It's about 40 to 60% more likely to have a substance use disorder if you have it in your family. And the strongest connection is father to son. So, all right, we've talked about this criteria before. Tolerance and withdrawal are physical symptoms built up in your body. You have to take more and more of the substance to get the same effect. If you don't have the substance, you get sick. Craving and preoccupation is it's an internal process. It's thinking about it over and over and over again. Can't control. You intended to have 2 drinks, you had 20 drinks. Can't cut back. You make rules for yourself. You just can't stick to them. Interpersonal issues are people are angry and upset with you about it. You avoid non-using activities. You only go to the party. Great deal of time spent on using. It's a full-time job. Use despite physical and psychological dangers. That would be, if you were told if you continue to drink, your liver is going to get shot, and you continue to drink. Use in physically hazardous situations, drinking and driving. Role failure, you don't go to work, you don't go to school. It affects your job, it affects your life. If there's a pattern of those behaviors in any 12-month period, and you meet 6 or more of those criteria, or if you're like me, it's the only test you ever got a perfect score on, you meet criteria for substance use disorder severe. Okay? That's literally the diagnostic criteria. And if it was alcohol, it would be alcohol use disorder severe, so on and so forth. Opioid use disorder severe. Questions about the criteria. Really hard sometimes to convince people that they meet the criteria, right? Well, hey, Johnny, it sounds like, your mom's upset with you and you meet criteria, interpersonal issues. Well, that's her fault. If she would just chill, I've had them say that to me. They don't say it like that. If she would just chill and leave us alone and act like every other mom. What do you mean act like every other mom, Johnny? Well, every other mom lets us smoke crack and pop acid and... I have trouble believing that, Johnny. You don't live in my neighborhood. You see how I could go with this?
Yeah.
And it's just like, and then this isn't me. This isn't me. Now, what's interesting is we have a lot of folks who come to Favor that know that this is them. And you may have someone in your life that knows that it is. So just because you know it's you doesn't mean you want to change. What do you guys think about that? That's like the hypertension thing with me. Just because I know it's there doesn't mean I want to change. Why would you know it's you and still not want to change?
It's not ready.
Just not ready? What do you mean by that?
She told us she enjoyed it and she wasn't going to quit.
So the pain of using doesn't outweigh the pain of quitting. Do you guys get that? And a lot of times family members think that the person's in denial of the disease, but they're not really in denial of the disease. They know that they have a problem. They're just not going to change. Because the values and the things that they hold important, like using, outweigh the potential consequences. And that's where conversations and change and boundaries can start to come in. Do you guys get that? Denial is really, really not what the problem is. At least not with folks who are showing up here at Favor. Most of the time they have an idea of what's going on. The younger they are, the harder it'll be. The substance involved, the hardest substance would be what? Alcohol. Alcohol is the hardest substance to convince somebody they have a problem. Why? It's legal and it's everywhere, and you can explain it away by saying everyone else does it. You know, there is no such thing as recreational heroin use. There just isn't. And so that's a different conversation, you can say. Marijuana has now been moved into another category. I don't know if you've dealt with anybody who's smoking the hippie lettuce, but that's been moved into a whole other category. It's almost kind of like on the alcohol level in terms of no big deal. And then you have this whole other group of drugs that sort of everyone agrees probably isn't that good for you, right? And even the person using them is more likely to agree to that. Except there's one exception, and it's younger people, and it's with pills. It's with pills. And folks my age, if they've moved into the abuse of prescription drugs, they can recognize it. But people like 16 to 25, they can't. And I've talked to them about this, and it's a very, very interesting conversation. When you dig into it, what they say are things like this. You guys have been giving us pills since I was 3. I was told I was ADHD when I was 3, and the teacher said I had to go on these pills, and now you're telling me that these pills are a problem. Do you guys get that? Like, if you talk to kids and they're honest with you, that the pill culture has changed, and they don't think that's as big of a deal. But whereas cocaine, it's harder for them to explain that away. Heroin, really hard to explain that away. You guys get the prescription thing? You've been giving us pills since we were 3. Yes?
Yeah, and the other thing is just the mentality of self-medicating and the rationale of thinking that there's a pill that'll cure everything.
Yeah.
Cure anything.
Yeah. Yep. I'm going to talk about self-medicating and how that comes in and stuff like that. And that falls into a situation also where people will know they have a problem, but they'll almost kind of like make a conscious decision to take their chances and continue doing what they're doing because it's just not worth it to stop. This is the only thing that keeps me sane.
Well, and it's too hard to go to a therapist to get the real help that you need.
And it's also, again, like this is something that people usually come into over time. You guys get that? Like, there's a process of coming to. Age of first use is the most important indicator. That is the biggest thing that we're faced with. All right, so let's go into it real quick on how this happens. This is a lot of information, guys. I'm going to give you like the short story version of this. Like, why do certain people become addicted and why are they more susceptible to addiction? First of all, there's like 5 or 6 other theories that kind of like, but the most popular one is related to dopamine. And there's this idea that some of us were born with lower levels of dopamine than the rest of y'all. And they call it reward deficiency syndrome. And we just can't experience thrills, and we can't experience pleasure, and we can't experience life the way other people can. It's also tied to ADD behavior, that kind of stuff. The idea there seems to be a profile of people who not only are going to become addicted more easily, but are more likely to take a chance and use. Now, this isn't everyone, because there are also a large group of people that are dealing with other issues that make it likely that they'll take something like anxiety, for example. They're more likely to take something because why? They're trying to relieve the anxiety. And I'm going to talk about that as we go through. So you don't have as much dopamine, so you're drawn to what? Something that makes you feel good. And that's the idea of the reward deficiency syndrome. And what happens is, over time, as you use these substances, now this is important to know, whether or not you were born with less dopamine, over time, if you use these substances, it can shut it off. Do you guys get that? But what happens is you put it in your body, it's not okay. It's not okay. Loosely, this process is known as the cascade. And whenever the dopamine will just become overwhelming, too much activity in the brain, and it'll shut off the production of dopamine. And I'll show you pictures of that as we go through. But there's a lot of holes in this, and there's a lot of things that we need to know, like also stress can shut off dopamine. Trauma can shut off dopamine. sometimes food and diet can shut off dopamine. So there's a lot of things that can contribute to this like gap in feeling normal. Now let's stop there for a minute and see if you have any. Do you guys get what I'm talking about? Let's see if this helps. All right, so this is just sort of like a process here. So if you look, and we'll start out here, and this is Rich, okay? I should be here. I should be at a 10. You guys see this? That's normal. That's the rest of the world. But I'm walking around at an 8. Now, I put the substance in my body, and what happens? I get jacked up to a 15. I've been walking around. I've been feeling kind of, just not feeling it, life, not feeling it. And you'll hear people talk about this. I took this thing. It was like, boom, game on. Everything changed for me. Some of the metaphors you'll hear is like, it was like the world went from being black and white to color TV. I finally knew how to relax. I finally knew how to have fun. Do you guys see that? Now, this doesn't happen one time. Let's go on a record. You can do this over and over and over again. And some people just stay there, and it never moves on to anything else, and they just one day quit. That's risky use. Are we clear on that? Now, what happens, though, is if you do that over and over again, the brain compensates and shuts off a little bit of the dopamine. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa! That is too much dopamine. Let's back that bad boy off, and it takes you down to a 6. So when you don't have it in your body, where you at? You're actually lower than you were when you started. So now, what do? You've just been dealing with this. You finally had some fun, so what do? You go get it again. I got to get this in. I got to get this in. And you still get a payoff. You're still where you need to be. Now, the brain does the same thing. This isn't cool. Let's back this bad boy off a little bit more. Now you're walking around at a 2. You guys following this? So you use it again, and this is when it gets diabolical. And now you don't even get up to normal. And then, same thing. Now you're at a 0. Then, you can't technically fall below the line, but you literally fall so far down that you can't dig yourself up. That's where addiction comes in, guys. That's actually called, yes?
A question, when you get past, like to the second or third time and you're lower and lower, is that where it requires more of the
Yes.
substance?
Yes, and yes, that's exactly right. That's where the tolerance kicks in. That's where the desperate seeking kicks in. That's where the person's doing all these things where, you can't understand it at all. It doesn't make sense. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but yet, for instance, my daughter, you cannot tell she's been drinking, and yet we have a, what do you call it, breathalyzer at home.
Yeah,
The other night she blew into it, she was .285,
yeah.
and I don't think anybody, maybe you would, but most of these people in here probably.
Well, I might not have either. Like, you definitely build up a tolerance. I don't know if you guys, and that's any drug. That's any substance. You hear it all the time that people were like maintenance drinkers, and they would just drink, and most of the time people wouldn't even know what was going on around them. They're trying to just get back up and get anything.
But she functions.
Yeah, that's the way that she functions. That's the way that we function. And now, if you get over here, and it depends on what the substances are and things like this, like again, alcohol is the easiest one to pull off because you can go anywhere and get it. But picture if this was like another illicit substance that you have to get. This is really where a lot of the stuff that makes people scratch their head come in. Why would they do that? How could they do that? I can't believe they would, put the kids in the car and drive over there and buy that. It's because, you just can't go down to the Sphinx and buy some of this other stuff. Do you guys get that? Yes.
So how long, whenever, try to explain to a person, kind of, tapering off from this and trying to quit, I know they can be scared, if they think that they're not going to feel this way for a very long time. How long does it take for the dopamine levels to, go back to normal?
Yeah, I'm going to show you some slides on it, and it's different for different people, but it does come back online for sure relatively quickly. This isn't a permanent condition. There are certain substances that are much, much harder than others, and it depends on...
Because it's just like some people are like, am I going to feel this way forever in 2 days?
Oh, yeah.
Weeks, whatever.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You feel like that early on, and a lot of people won't stick it out until they start to feel better. But you do start to feel better. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, in our situation, it was my daughter and the boyfriend, and his levels seemed to be so different than ours. I mean, I know they were using at the same time, maybe or maybe not the same amount, but he apparently has been able to just quit.
So you guys have all seen this. You've all seen how people react different to different substances. You've experienced it in your life, I'm sure, where somebody can drink and they drink one drink and what? They're just laid out. And that's the same thing with any substance. And also, how about this? Have you ever known anybody that could just eat whatever they want and stay skinny? You know that person? What is that all about? It's the physiology. The same thing applies for substances. It's so important to know this, guys. It is not like you can't look at Rich and say, this is how it rolled out in his life, therefore this is how it's going to roll out in her life. And she needs to know that and understand it. And to your point on like how long does it take, this is why it's so important for the person to be around people in recovery and therapists and counselors so they can get told, like, look, this is different for different people, but this isn't permanent. This isn't forever. And I'm going to talk about co-occurring issues, which can also... So it looks like this on the other end, right? So you start off, you're actually lower than baseline, but over time you get back up. But the thing is, you don't go beyond like where you were. Like this doesn't get fixed. You get that?
Because it's a set point.
This is a set point. That's a set point. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I guarantee that this is me. I guarantee it. In recovery, my deal has been like, something fun happened. Like seriously, like I can't, and it's not because, what? It's not because I haven't done a program. It's not because I haven't seen a therapist. It's not because I'm depressed. What is it? I'm here. So I'm actively, literally, in the middle of a process right now trying to address this through nutrition and supplements because I've got with a guy who's trying to help me with this. Now this isn't how it goes down for everybody in addiction. So some people will return to here. You only go here if that was where you started. Does that make sense? Because you can also get there without being deficient. And I hope I'm making sense, guys. I'm not saying only deficiencies lead to this. I could give any of you guys a substance long enough and you would become addicted to it. Yes?
And doesn't a lot of that have to do with the first stage of use?
Yes, it had. Well, theoretically, that makes it more likely you're going to use. Yes, it has a lot to do with that. Now, people say, what do we do about this? And traditionally, the remedy has been a lot of like 12-step work, a lot of rehab type work, and if that works for the person, go for it. That worked for me for about 2 years. And then I had to find other programming and other things to do. And I have done a lot of different stuff to address these issues as time goes by. What we know does help if somebody's wondering like when they're going to feel better. There's a couple things that definitely help. One is being in groups. Human beings are designed to be around each other. They're designed to be in groups. So being in groups where you have like a common kind of interest. Getting therapy, working on this stuff seems to regenerate. There's this thing called neuroplasticity where we can come back online. Exercise. The thing that's a real big deal, guys, is the way we eat. Like sugar can kind of really derail you in recovery. But what do? We got a freaking candy bowl out there that has like, literally like, the candy bowl has like balls of sugar that are painted. I don't even know, like what are those things? And that might as well be like a rock, it's like take that and it just kicks it in. Isolating yourself is very dangerous if you're dealing with dopamine deficiency. This is our main challenge. It's a complex issue. We need to try to help people get through it. Questions about that part of the process? Yes, sir.
One question I had was that earlier you had a graph and you said non-risky use.
Yeah.
Well, how does that fit in with that? It seems like one use and you might...
No, it's not like that. And I should have said that. It's not one use. It's not like that. So the truth is, the honest truth is, for all substances, the majority of people who use them will not become addicted. For all substances across the board, the majority of people who use them will not become addicted. So you look at something like heroin, which is kind of measurably the most addictive substance, it's about 28%. So it's not like that. It doesn't happen like boom, one time you're done. As a matter of fact, the majority of people won't become addicted. But 30% addiction rate is really, really high, guys. That's really high because that means if you use it once, they're counting people who even did it once. You guys get that? So, what other questions about the dopamine part of this process? Yes?
How do you measure a dopamine deficiency?
You do it through a PET scan. I'll show you an image of one. And so people argue about what's it called? What is this? Is this like a regardless of exactly what you think is going on, we know for sure that when you put these heavy-duty drugs into your body, it affects your brain permanently. These are all other theories that are out there. Some people think it's a learning disorder, similar to ADHD. ADHD is technically like an impulse control disorder where the person doesn't have the ability to focus, doesn't have the ability to regulate his own behavior. Some people have likened addiction in a similar way because there seems to be a connection between ADHD and addiction. And I can get down with that. I know for sure I have ADHD. Like, how many times did you guys put your wallet in the fridge this week? I'm working on 3. I don't know why I do that.
Where's your phone, Rich?
Cold cat.
My phone's right there. I go home and I open the fridge, and if I usually have my wallet in my hand, and I will just put it in the fridge. It's the stupidest thing in the world, right? So is there a connection between that type of stuff? And then also the self-medicating theories. But whatever the reason, guys, whatever the reason the person's putting it in, can we all agree that this stuff is heavy-duty substances and it does something to the brain? And the deal is with dopamine, remember, we've talked about dopamine. Dopamine in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's released when we do anything pleasurable. The problem is, if you look at, like, this is just 2 substances. This is amphetamines and methamphetamines. If this is the normal amount of dopamine that's released, like if food gives you 50% increase, methamphetamine gives you what? What is that? A 1,200% increase. This is the problem, okay? This is the part when they start looking at it and they can measure it. These are normal responses to, and some people would say even with video games that that's not good. And with sex, you can become addicted to sex. And like cocaine, holy cow. You just like totally flooded your brain. Amphetamine, so on and so forth. And, other substances that they've studied. You can't see this real well, but if you were to go up, you would see like these are higher numbers up here. So amphetamine is the thing that hits you the quickest and the hardest. But it goes away relatively quick. Alcohol is not on here, but alcohol falls a little bit above nicotine. Okay. The problem with alcohol, if you want to be honest, is accessibility. Like overall, in terms of its addictive nature, if it wasn't legal, it wouldn't be. People wouldn't be getting addicted to alcohol. Well, I shouldn't say that because in Prohibition they were drinking it out of bathtubs. It doesn't hit you as the same way some of this stuff does. Does that make sense? And then this is normal. The point of these slides is you're crushing your brain with dopamine. You're crushing your brain with dopamine. And just like the fact that they are going to question whether or not midget football can continue, because watch, mark my words, kids' brains can't handle this stuff. That's what the problem here is. You can't be 14 and be putting this stuff in your body. I mean, you shouldn't be putting it in your body at any point, but if you're 24 and you do this, that is much different than if you're 14. And so I was 14 when I started drinking. And what was I doing? I was crushing my brain with these substances. And if you talk to people in treatment, the average age is around 13. And you're just simply not ready for it, guys. You're simply just not ready to put that much dopamine into your system, and that's why the brain reacts the way it does. Does that make sense? This is probably the best slide, because you can just so graphically see the difference. Carol?
I'm still a little confused about the benzodiazepines and how it makes you high, but it's kind of suppressive.
No, it's not. Like high is a very misleading. High doesn't mean it gets you up. It means it adds dopamine to your system. It means it takes, like if benzos were on here, it would also be up here. Doesn't have anything to do with the actual, because opioids, morphine, doesn't get you high. So it doesn't have, the term high is a very...
What is it doing? I mean, what is it doing?
Well, what any psychoactive substance does is it releases these units of dopamine.
Even the downers.
Even the downers.
Because it makes you happy and
Yeah, well, and it absolutely, it's just, it releases it. Now, the difference is that with benzos, it doesn't act on other things. So like amphetamine also acts on like norepinephrine and adrenaline and stuff like that. You know, like those details are different. There's questions. One of the controversies is like, what's a psychoactive drug? You'll see people to get into this, especially for people who are in recovery, and it's like, and it's getting a little harder because there are different formulations of different types of drugs where they're not apparently not doing this type of stuff, and so there's questions around what's safe for a person to take, that kind of thing. I'll be honest with you, if a person is doing what they need to do and they're talking to people and they're kind of in a good place, that's not going to make or break them. It really isn't. I think that it's not like that. It's not like, oh, I went to the doctor, I twisted my ankle, I took one pain pill, but I still was talking to my therapist, and that's not the person who relapses. Do you guys get that? The person who relapses is the person who's not doing any of that other stuff. And it's not really one pain pill that they're taking 4. I mean, we got to be real about these situations. We scare the crap out of people. It's not that fragile. Do you guys understand? Like, once you're in recovery, my brain is no longer like it was. Not that I need to go out and like drink to prove that to anybody, but it's not like that. It's good news. Like, recovery is really good news. Like, I don't want to drink, and all I ever wanted to do was drink, and I don't think about it, and I have like very, very weird thoughts about the different types of alcohol that are out there, but not from like I want to, but more like an intellectual evaluation point of view. I can't understand it. Why do you have so many different types of like craft beers, and why do they have such stupid names, like Black Stag, Red Stallion 3? Like, come on, man, just drink some freaking Natty Light and get it done, right? Here's your question. Your question on the dopamine. This is what it looks like. So this is what it should look like. When you're lit up, this is dopamine working well. This is no drug use. This is us tonight, right? We're good to go. This is what it looks like after abusing or after using. And this is, oh, excuse me, they don't have, this is what, it goes away altogether. And then what you see is 10 days later, 100 days later. Okay? So people say, how long does it take? It's very different for different people. Very different for different people. But it does come back online. It does come back online. Did you have a question? Yep.
Yes, I was going to kind of make a connection or get your take on the previous slide. You were talking about amphetamines.
Yeah.
And relate that to the 70s when psychiatrists and teachers were going nuts with Ritalin or Adderall.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
all that was speed kind of thing.
And the good news is, take care. The good news is that they've worked on that, and they're trying to change. There's different things that aren't like that, but yeah, you're absolutely right. It was, and there's
it's kind of like the start of all this.
Yeah, and there's always been different types of speed getting tossed around. I mean, at different times, and these drugs can vary, guys. I mean, it's very hard to like keep up with the different substances. I'll be honest with you.
It's frightening when you think they started in schools giving
Yeah.
6 and 7-year-olds.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, those 6 and 7-year-olds in middle school were selling it to their friends.
Yeah. Which is really when it gets problematic.
Yeah, because that's one of the ways my daughter started, was her friends sold her
Yeah.
ADHD.
It was very accessible. It becomes very, very accessible. So, all right, so let's now talk real quick about the self-medicating kind of deal and talk a little bit about co-occurring disorders. So there's a thing called the DSM-5, and I don't have it with me. I was going to bring it in here. It's literally the manual that we use to diagnose people with issues. And there's over 400 different issues in there. And so breathing is a disorder these days. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the most common things that we deal with, and you guys can ask questions. First of all, it's really, really common for people who have substance use disorders to also be carrying some other type of diagnosis. This is just some studies that have been done, 40 to 65%, depending on what you look at. The most common ones are the mood disorders, or what are now called depressive disorders. Major depression, dysthymia, followed by anxiety, and then post-traumatic stress disorder. Those are the most common, and then you also get into bipolar type 1 and some of the more serious mental health issues. Bipolar type 1 has a very, very strong connection to substance use disorder. And then if you look at trauma also, and you know, these are, so what's the deal here, guys? The deal here is if you have this going on, let's just take depression, for example. If you're depressed and you can't get out of bed, if you're depressed and you're thinking about killing yourself, if you're depressed and you can't move, that does make the payoff from substances a little bit better. Would you agree? That's what these connections are all about. It's not, this part is not complicated. If I have debilitating social anxiety and I cannot go to work unless I pop 4 Xanax, do you see how I'm more likely to pop 4 Xanax? And that doesn't mean it's okay, not at all. That doesn't mean it's okay at all, but this is what this is all about. And the problem is for parents and for loved ones, many times you're not sure what you're dealing with. Because a lot of times it'll be, I'm anxious, and you'll take the kid to see a psychiatrist, and they'll wind up with that diagnosis versus, well, he's also using. So you feel like you don't know what's up and what's down when you start this journey. But let's just all agree that it's very, very common. These are just all the different substances kind of broken down. Very common to be dealing with this. It's going to come. That's going to be the first thing that happens. If your kid is having problems, if your loved one's having problems, you're probably going to, I mean, it's very easy to send them to a psychiatrist. They will get a diagnosis. Are we clear on this? So I'm going to try to walk through that a little bit. The main question, yes, ma'am.
My son's 42, and when he was younger, and he would, like, get into these substances and stuff, and we would take him to the doctor, and they found out that he was addicted. They wouldn't do anything with him, they'd send him to Marshall Dickens. Or
Yeah.
they'd send him to rehab. They wouldn't address his mental issues.
Yes, I'm going to talk about that. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
There's this idea that if it's a drug issue, we can't take care of it.
Yeah, they would.
And it's I don't know if you guys know that or not. Like that would be, you know, that now if you go to a private counselor, sometimes it's not like that. But like if you go to the doctor or to the system, that's how it's going to work. It's one or the other. And this is again where I could stand up here and I could tell you how it should be, but I'm going to tell you how it is. And I'm going to tell you what we got to do is you got to let us know how we can help you with this because you're going to have to negotiate it yourself.
If they wouldn't help with his mental issues because they said that he had to take.
We can't do anything until they're sober. Yep. And so this is what it's about. It's like which came first. It's very, very hard to tell which of these issues came first. Sometimes you can do like a comprehensive evaluation and you can get a really good history and you can get mom and dad involved and you can determine that the anxiety was there, you know, before the substance use started. But I mean, for the most part, you can't tell which came first. And usually what it is sort of like which door do they go in is kind of like how it works. And it's kind of random. It's kind of random. And then that program becomes kind of like the primary program. It's been identified, and they say, like, take care of that first, and then we'll take care of the other thing.
Well, he can go through, he's been through so many programs. He would go through the programs because he was forced into it. As soon as he got out, he was done with it.
Yes, yes. And that could be just because that's where he's at. That could also be because something wasn't addressed. I don't know. But this deal of, like, and this is just the way it is, man. The idea that a person goes somewhere and goes through a program and they're okay, do you guys understand how faulty that is? That is not, like, that is, the norm is, no, they're not. No, they're not. And the ones that are do a bunch of stuff when they come home. They do a bunch of recovery-related things. And you know, we haven't figured out how to make sure people will do what they need to do when they come home, if you want to be honest. At FAVOR Greenville, we try to. We try to pick you up a detox, or we try to do the best we can. You know what I mean? But like the truth is, most places haven't even tried to ask the question. Do you guys get that? Like they haven't even acknowledged that that's the way it is. They would just simply say your son didn't want it. He didn't do what he was supposed to. I say to that, like that's silly. That's ridiculous. We know that that's the norm. Do you guys get that? It's like you have pneumonia, you're going to have a high fever. It would be like saying, let's wait till your fever goes away and we'll help you with your pneumonia. We know that the person's not going to do what they're supposed to do when they come home. Why in the world are we not trying to figure it out? I got to tell you something. I have no time or energy or patience for any more of the bullshit going on with the talk about we're going to do this with the opioid epidemic or not. And here's $4 billion to take care of it. $4 billion to prop up the exact system that literally is what? Taking care of 2.4 million people.
And isn't working.
No, there's no chance. Like, there's literally no chance. We need to talk about $100 billion to like literally start over. And one of the main solutions would be, how do you get a person to do what they don't want to do? How do you get them to show up at their outpatient clinic? How do you get them to show up at their AA meetings? How do you get them to show? But do you guys see how society has literally said you don't do that? Your son has to want it. And my goodness, if you don't, he should hit bottom and just have enough pain. I mean, I've spent so much time doing this work, guys. I can't tell you how many people most of the people I know don't have anymore where to go for bottom.
For the first time in a long time, he has finally agreed to seek counsel.
Yeah.
He has continuously kept his appointments.
And that's a big deal. That's an important thing. That's a big deal because, that's what actually will get it done eventually, right? If a person keeps, yes, sir.
Yeah, similar to what you were saying though about that, is that a lot of folks say, well, he has to suffer the consequences of his act.
Yeah.
Well, the immediate family, the family showing closest to the individual, everybody's suffering.
Everybody's suffering. And again, the deal is we have a disease that literally keeps people away from the help, and the help waits for the person to come. And so the deal would be, this probably doesn't change until we get a massive number of people who are trained and supervised and taught on how to go into people's homes and get people out of bed. And I got to tell you something, I know how to do it. I did it for freaking years. You want to know what I used to get paid for? I was called a therapeutic staff support. I would go into kids' homes and get them up, kids who would skip school. I would go into the house and get them up for school. I am a freaking expert at that. I have a great, one of the best things to do is to go over to the kid and just push on him while he's sleeping. And then he'll be like, I'm going to kick your ass. And he'll be like, well, you got to get up to do that. So, oh, well, that's not right, Rich. That's not a good clinical intervention. That's not a good thing to do. It is. It is. It is. And you can do it. And for 5 years in the city of Pittsburgh, in the worst parts of Pittsburgh, I ran a team that our job was to find seriously and persistently mentally ill folks. And listen to this, guys. They didn't sign up for anything. The Medicaid insurance system sent us their name. As true as I'm standing, they sent the name Joe Smith, last known address. And you know what? We had to go find him. And we would go and we would cold call him. And we would knock on the door and we'd be like, hey, this is Rich from the community treatment team. We're here to talk to you about what's been going on. Because these folks never went to their follow-up appointments. We never had a problem. I never had anybody tell me, get the F out of my house. I never felt threatened for 1 minute. I have to get my wife here to talk about the nurses who work for me in that program. These nurses would roll up in there, and they would roll up in there like they were gangster, man. And they would go, and they would find these people, and we would give them their meds in their home. Now, that was proposed for drug addicts. That very same program was proposed in that very same city. And what do you think they said? They have to want it. Literally, the lady said they have to want it. So this is the problem. This is the problem. So here's the deal. Becoming like an expert on how mental health works, right? It's as random as it gets. I tell this story. It's a Pittsburgh story. It could be a Greenville story. It could be whatever. But let me tell you how this goes down. And this is and these are two different doors. Mental health, substance use. So you got a guy, here's his history. He's like in his early 30s, all right? He has a history of probably like low-grade sort of dysthymia. It's been there for a long time, but he's never really been actively suicidal. He's never been treated, but he would always be described by his family as just feeling that's a depressed guy. But he's never actually been to treatment, okay? He's also had a drinking problem. He drinks a little too much, but he's never really gotten in any trouble or anything like that. And it's Pittsburgh. Come on now. That's what you do. And so, but it's also on the radar. He goes to a Steeler game, and he's tailgating, and he's getting ripped, right? Because that's also what you do. And so he goes, he's having a good time, goes into the stadium, You know, the Steelers beat the Browns 75-0, because that's also what happens. And so you go through that, and he does his thing, and he comes out, and he gets in the car, and he drives home. Okay? Now he's drunk, right? He gets, right out of the stadium, and he's going over the Roberto Clemente Bridge, and he gets pulled over, and he gets a DUI. What door does he enter? What door does he enter? He enters that door. He goes to jail for the night, but then he's referred to the local treatment program. And he's what? An alcoholic. You guys get this? All right. Same guy, same scenario, gets in the car, makes it across the bridge, gets the whole way out to the East Hills, makes it home, knocks on his door. His wife meets him at the door. She has the kid in her hand. She's like, I told you if this happened again, I was leaving. She gets in the minivan and leaves. He becomes suicidal. He becomes distraught and suicidal. And which door does he enter? He goes to the psychiatric unit, and he's told that he's depressed, and his alcohol use is a symptom of his depression. You guys, it's that random, guys. It's that random. Now, sometimes if the issue is so high, the doors are just obvious, right? Like if it's really, really serious. But you get how, like, when it first starts, it's just like that. And the problem is, depending on where you go, if he goes in the mental health door, it's treated as depression. And that's where things like you got to get sober before we can help you come in. These type of attitudes sort of come down. What are they going to do if it's depression? They're going to want to, don't drink, let's get you on some meds, and let's do some talk therapy and work through the depression. And it could be good stuff that they're trying to do, but they're discounting this other issue. Or he could go into the substance use program, and it could be the complete opposite. Oh, you're not depressed. Come on, man. Your life has been a country music song for the last year. Your wife left, the dog left, you wrecked your truck. That's pretty good, right? So, you're not depressed. Just quit drinking. You're going to be better. And this process, this is why it's so hard to figure it out and so important. And that's why parents are going to have to be so actively engaged. So when my daughter went through some stuff this summer, I case managed the shit out of that thing, man. I was not her dad. I was her case manager. The way that I handle people, the way I talk to people, the way I knew my way around it. You guys follow me? There were people who wanted to have her go to treatment, and it was more of a mental health kind of thing. And if I wouldn't have known what I knew, I'm telling you, I guarantee it would have got butchered. You guys follow me? I want you guys to know as much as me. I literally want you all to have this knowledge so that if it happens to your loved one or to your neighbor or to your neighbor's kid or to somebody at your church, that you know enough to say, whoa, put on the brakes here. Let's think this through. We got to find out what's going on here. We got to figure this out. And I actually think that that's the only chance that we have as a country to do anything about this. Because it's just, that is, and then good luck. That whole thing, we're not going to take care of this until he gets sober. What you got to do is you got to address both things at once. You have to address both things at once, and there are programs who say they do, and some programs do it better than others, but this would be what? Yeah, let's get you into an AA group. Let's get you into a drug and alcohol counselor. Maybe you got to go to detox, but you're also going to be talking about this depression issue, and we do need you to get evaluated for this medicine. There's not one or the other. Who cares what came first? They both make the other thing worse. And you're probably never going to find out. Another reason why this doesn't happen is because people think that people with addiction are using the other things as an excuse. They think that Rich is just saying that he's depressed because it's an excuse and he's just trying to get drugs. You guys get that? Well, you don't have to give a person mood or mind-altering drugs to deal with these issues. It's not like that at all. But that's what happens. Ideally, you find a program that's fully integrated. So there's different ways to look at it. This is a spectrum. On this side is full integration. This is a program that has a psychiatrist always there. Everyone automatically gets a comprehensive evaluation. Do you follow that? And they do harm reduction. They're all about figuring this out. That's full integration. And then on the other side, you have zero integration. Mental health over here, drug and alcohol over here. Most of the programs, guys, fall here. They do have a psychiatrist, but he's on staff, and he doesn't see people unless the team wants him to be seen, and they're not there a lot. So You have to kind of figure it out. What we don't want to have happen is what we've been talking about, sequential treatment, where you finish one and then go do the other. You want to have parallel treatment. And how do you do that? Well, they're probably going to enter the system in one place, mental health. Then you, as an informed person, you have to start trying to push them in other directions. You have to start trying to get them to go other places like meetings. You have to try to get them hooked up with a drug and alcohol counselor if they don't have one. You have to act, and they're going to be like, you're enabling. Don't do that for him. Let him do that for himself. And maybe you don't, depending on how long you've been doing it. You get it? There's always a place to say, like, yeah, I'm done with that. Usually that's over a period of time. Are we clear on that? That typically happens over a period of time. The whole idea of, like, let him do it himself, guys, the whole idea of let it do himself comes from Al-Anon. Al-Anon comes from a long and storied tradition of wives not being able to, like wanting to, like, detach from their husbands. Do you see that? It was never meant to apply to, like, a 22-year-old heroin addict. I don't know what's going on with me, but I sometimes I go through these periods of time where I literally cannot believe the stupidity. I can't even see, like, how can you think that this experience and these programs and these ideas that were developed for wives to figure out how to deal with their husband, and she probably should have been told, don't do it for him. Do you get that? But it was never for an 18-year-old heroin addict. There wasn't even like an 18-year-old heroin addict when Al-Anon started. Hey, look, man, I could go home tonight and I could type my term paper on a typewriter. Right? And hopefully on the way home, if I have to make a call, they'll have a payphone. And then I can go and I can watch, hopefully there'll be something on one of 3 networks. You get where I'm coming from? Like, my goodness. Okay. Serenity now, man. Chill out, Rich. Just calm down, dude. Yes?
Two of the most important things to, like, encourage people who are new is when we first started coming, someone told me to let her know that no matter where she was, I would always take her to a meeting.
So there's this phrase that goes like this: I will support you in your recovery, I will not support you in your addiction. Meaning, like, if you're working toward something positive. Now, again, take all this into consideration with your situation. You're just at the front end of this. If this goes on for another 30 years, you're not going to be handling it like that. You know what I mean? So it's different for different people, but absolutely, absolutely. So you guys might have to wind up being involved in trying to help referrals and find referrals for your loved one, and even help other people with referrals. And, you know, it's not the easiest thing in the world if you've ever tried to find, like, a psychiatrist, right? It's not the easiest thing in the world even if you've ever tried to find a therapist. Here's something that I would recommend right from the jump, especially, like, if the person is younger. There should be no way in the world that they go to a psychiatrist without signing a release of information for you to be able to talk to them. And if they say no, I would start setting hard boundaries. I am going to talk to your psychiatrist. I'll try not to get in your business. Yes?
My kid says, stay on the schedule.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. Unless he's doing okay. Like, if he's doing well, I would be like, hey, man, we're paying for this. We care about you. We love you. We need to know what's going on. I don't have to go into the appointment with you. You can go into your own appointment and talk and say whatever you want, but I do need to be able to find out, like, whether you're going and stuff like that. See, most psychiatrists won't talk to you unless you have a release.
Yeah.
So
Even the rehab facility.
won't talk to you unless you have a release. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, we were lucky. She was in a program, and this was in Florida, but where the counselor actually came to the house, and he would call me on the way. And I always took a walk and told him what had happened all week. So he came in knowing if she lied, that she was lying.
So she signed a release of information.
Well, and she was under 18 at that point.
Oh, that's a different story maybe. Yeah. Well, you guys are the customer. Y'all are the customer, really. Let's get real about this. Does that make sense? The parents usually are the customer. You're the ones who paid for the facility. It's your insurance if they're under 26.
Well, and even at Greenville Mental Health, I went in there and was able to, after she was 18, the counselor told me, you can tell me anything you want. I can't tell you anything.
Yeah, I would now understand I'm saying this like as if it's easy, and you may try to do it, and it may not happen. I mean, that could easily go down that way where you try to, and then you got to figure out, like, where do I set these boundaries and how do I do this? But if a person is trying to get better and the family is kind of like actively involved in their life, that release should be signed and there should be sharing back and forth of information. I talked to a man last night who lost his son. When his son went to rehab, the rehab didn't talk to him once. I swear, man, like for a minute, that's my insurance. I am your customer. I will be outside the door of the office. Just like, tell me what's up. Go ahead, tell me how you can't tell me. See, this, again, guys, this model was set up for what? Mostly adult men who needed to go to rehab for alcoholism. These are facts. Richard didn't make this up. This is how the model was set up. And so all these practices, again, made a little more sense. I don't even think it was appropriate then. Finding a good psychiatrist, trying to piece it together, looking at our website, FAVOR Greenville can help. We have the call line where you can ask some questions. We have this. I think I said this last week. I use the website Psychology Today if I'm looking for a private therapist or a psychiatrist in an area that I'm not familiar with, because you can put the zip code in and you can roll it through. But a lot of times, depending on the situation, you may have to figure that out. How many people never had to figure that stuff out? There might have been a referral gone, and there might have been a way it was supposed to go down. The other thing that I'll say, and we'll kind of like leave it here, the mental health versus substance use issue. You probably will have to make a decision on where the person lands. You probably will be in a situation where we have to say, like, we can't find both at once, so what are we going to start with? There's a way to think about this that might help you. And it's different quadrants. Okay, so if you start on quadrant 1, you have low substance use and low mental health. You could start the person anywhere. This is anywhere. This is maybe like some anxiety and some occasional marijuana use. Do you guys see that? He could go to a private therapist, or he could start in drug and alcohol. Okay? Low substance use, high mental health. This is going to land in the mental health system. And somebody's going to have to try to make referrals for the substance use. Do you guys follow this? The other option is high substance use, low mental health. What would that be like? Maybe it's chronic alcoholism and we think they're a little anxious. And then over here is high substance use and high mental health. This takes a lot of like residential support usually and multiple trips. And the main thing that you want to focus on if you're asking questions is diagnosis and medication. Okay? Now, I'm not a big proponent of medication, but if the person has been seen and they have any kind of evaluation, finding out what the diagnosis is and whether or not there are meds, because sometimes you won't know that. You literally won't know what your loved one is. And sometimes, believe it or not, they won't know. And I think it's important, if we're trying to figure out how to help this, we need to know what the baseline is. So those would be and that's why you don't need to find out the deep, dark secrets of what's being discussed. You guys get that? Nobody needs to hear like the content of the session. Nobody recommends that. It would just be more about like, is he showing up, and what do you think's happening here? What is this? Is this actual anxiety? Is this actual depression? No, you think it's ADHD? Like, let's talk about this. There's a reason why kids are on insurance till they're 26 now, right? I mean, we know that, right? Like, this is not 1953 when people left the house at 18. They're not off the payroll yet. Are we clear?
Yes.
I mean, believe me, I know. I got 3. I need the beds. I'm like a rehab. Let's go. Let's get them going here. But they're not off the payroll. They're on the insurance. We're in this weird transition as a society where like it takes kids longer than ever to grow up, but we're still treating them like they're adults.
So they think they are.
Well, and if they need help and we're helping them, then we got to try to help figure that out. And I know it's not easy. Like a lot of times the kids will say, no, I'm not going to do that. And you have to play it out in your mind and say like, okay, do I really want to push this because maybe I shouldn't push it right now because he is going? You said something about your son is finally going. Like there is something about the idea that they're going somewhere. Okay, so that's good. That's a good example. Like you might want to just say, I'm not going to rock the boat in any kind of way for a little while. Do you guys get that part? And then it's a health and wellness orientation, guys. It's an ongoing process. This is just, how can I help you? I'm your mom, I'm your dad, I'm your friend, I'm your husband, I'm your wife. I'm worried about you, man. This isn't about like, you try to stay away from labels, you try to stay away from like judgment, you try to stay away from what, like that compulsion to give the person a speech. Because unless it's needed, you know what I mean? Like you want to, it's literally like, I'm worried about you, I'm worried about you, I'm worried about you. And again, think about it like analogous to other issues that people don't necessarily take care of themselves with. You know, and people get worried about us about other things too. People get worried about us. So, all right. Sorry that I went off several times tonight. It's a working on area. It's the last time I will ever, like, I'm going to be completely professional from this point forward. 100%.
Then we're not coming back.
100% buttoned down, man, and you're getting nothing but, like, the facts. No more editorializing from me.
You didn't curse tonight.
I did not.
You did not.
No, and I'll tell you what, that's awesome. That's the new Rich. No more cursing. No more like going off and having a rant. I'm completely under control from this point forward. All right? I'm finally growing up. Yep. So, all right. Don't forget we have the cards out front if you need to make any calls to anyone to consult. Those are coaches you'll get on the other end of the line. If we can get a moment of silence, I will be back here again next week, and we'll talk a little bit more about, next week we'll talk about trauma. So if we can get a moment of silence for those still suffering with this disease and for the family members brought in this no choice of their own, followed by the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. All right, good deal.